All right, so in this second portion of our rendering in motion module, I'm going to showcase Twinmotion as a kind of alternative rendering engine to Lumion. We have a very similar file set up here. One thing you'll notice is I've added a water surface here. So I added a layer. It's more, this is what that looks like in rendered view. And so that's the only additional attribute that I've added. I did export this already as a collada file, just like how we did for our Lumion work. And so we went File, Export Selected, switch this to a collada file, and I have it here as base 2. And so to start up Twinmotion, we'll go to Epic Games, we'll go to Library, and we'll launch Twinmotion here. So just really quickly as a starting point, I'll go over the navigation in a moment. It's a little difficult to really perceive what the navigation is doing without an object in the space. Before we go ahead and import the collada file, I want to just go over how you can import existing information. So you'll see here in Twinmotion, there's import, which is where we were. There's this context option where you can set paths, paint vegetation or scatter vegetation, and urban. There's some settings that we can do in terms of rendering, lighting, location, these kinds of things, the weather. Media, which we'll go over in terms of how to make a video, and then export, where we'll export a video. So at the moment, we're just in this context tab. We'll click on urban, and we can just search Seattle here. Give that a click. And we'll just go down to Gasworks Park and do a little zone grab. This area is fine for the purposes of the demo. So once we have that squared off, we'll hit grab. And so now that we have an object in here, I'll just describe a little bit how you move. You can see it in the controls up here as well. So you can right click to pan around, W to go forward, S to go back, A and D left to right. The other thing worth mentioning here is that we do have these additional options of Q and E to go up and down directly. And a setting that I think is really great is we can actually change the speed. So right now it may feel like we're moving through this landscape somewhat slowly. So if I hit 1, 2, 3, or 4, I can actually increase the speed at which I move through. So if I hit 4 and then W, you can see now I'm moving a lot quicker. So I'm quite far away here. I'll hit 3, 2, and 1. So quite slow. So that's a really useful setting rather than say in Lumion where you do the quick right double click. And let's just do a quick overview of this imported file. So pretty good in terms of the built form, but really we don't have much here by way of topography or any of the key identifying features from a landscape perspective that make up Gasworks Park, right? We don't have the overall sort of iconic mound, even the tree placement. There's just a few trees when really we have a forest grove parking lot and really a vegetation threshold moment moving through here. So doesn't quite get us what we want. That's why we're going to go ahead and import our model. But just as a kind of option to show you, if you do have a fairly flat site with a lot of massing, this may be a good option for you. If you click on this arrow over here, you can start to see the layers. So it's also very helpful in terms of showcasing just really quickly how Twinmotion is actually organized. So in this case, this is all context information divided into additional layers such as roads, buildings, and so on. Now we don't really want any of this information. This was just to show you that feature exists. So I'm going to right click and hit delete. And I'm actually also going to delete the starting ground. So that's this here. You can of course do the right click version, but I can also just select it and hit the delete key. And so from here, we'll go back to import, and I'm going to go ahead and import a geometry. Now you may find that your collada file doesn't appear at the start. This is just because there are two options here. So the first one is FBX, SketchUp, so SKP, OBJ, and Cinema 4D file options. But we want other, which our collada file is a .dae. So you really can open a bunch of different things here, which is a super nice feature to have. And we're going to go with base 2, and we'll hit open and import. So there you go. This is our overall landscape at the moment. I'm just zooming in here to look around. A couple features that are really nice right away in Twinmotion is, for one, we can select different objects individually and we can actually move them. And you can also hit the undo key. So it's a little more similar to what we might be used to in some of our other drafting software. You can also delete individual elements, whereas maybe in other rendering engines, such as Lumion, things tend to be sort of locked within a single import. Another thing worth mentioning just off the bat while we're doing an inventory of the work we have here and what we're seeing, it's really two things. We have a skyline beyond, which we may want to keep, but I'll show you how to edit that out. And the other thing is that this water at the moment doesn't go very far, right? We would maybe prefer this water to really go all the way over to our urban context. So the way you can do that, at the moment we have this gumball where we can really just sort of rotate and move things up and down. I'm just hitting Control-Z twice to undo those. But if we hit the 6 key, we can start to rotate in this axis. I hit undo again on that. And if we hit the 7 key, we can actually start to modify the scale, which is quite a nice feature. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and we're just going to go ahead and scale this up until we hit the skyline. And I'm going to hit the 5 key again to go back, because as I was scaling up, this started to move in this axis, you can see here. So I'm just going to go down just until something like that. And we can modify it a little more once we apply materials and things. In terms of our skyline, of course, if you sort of go up, this actually does do quite well in terms of the scene towards what would be downtown Seattle. Of course, the buildings don't quite match, but what you could do if you don't have an urban landscape in the distance is you can go over to Media, Image, create an image, go to More, Location, Background. So it's quite buried. This is because, generally speaking, some of our media settings like this, we would only really do later in our rendering of an image or rendering of a video in the case that we'll talk about today. But you can click here, and so you can swap this out for none or whatever else. For my site, this city landscape does quite a nice job of emulating the Seattle skyline relative to the water view you have from Gasworks Park. So from there, you can see we do have these layers that are set up based on our materials. But really, for the most part, we're not going to work within any of this information anyway. So we can just hit this shape and close that out. And over here, there's a similar shape, and this is where our tools start to appear. So if we want to, for instance, set our materials, we'll go to Materials. And so we can start to populate this site in terms of different information, such as, it could be that we want to start to do some grass. And so you can click down, drag and pull. We could, let's zoom in a little bit closer to the example site. I'll try to populate this somewhat similarly to the Lumion example, just so you have a sense of how the two operate. So we'll go grass, something, drag and pull. Maybe for this area, we want to do something more like we used ivy, a kind of ground cover. So something like this, ground plant. So we'll just drag that down and pull. And then maybe let's go to human made here. And we could do an asphalt trail for ourselves. We could actually zoom out a little bit and start to populate the larger site context as well. So we could do an asphalt road. There we are. Zoom in a little bit. Different kind of asphalt maybe for the sidewalk. And maybe we want to just stylize our buildings in some kind of way. We could just, for the fun of it, look at a sort of plastic. There we are. And maybe we do want to get a little more specific here. I'll showcase a paving option for this, since we did that in the other rendering software. Maybe we also want to do more of a rust finish for these, since they are rusty. So if you're not sure where certain materials are, brick happens to be here, so I'll just click on this just to get a brick option for us. Lots of different ones here that you can see in the preview, which is also quite nice without having to actually drag and pull it over. So let's say I'm happy with that. Set that down. Down here, you can start to change a bunch of things like the color or the scale, small to large. And If I zoom out, let's just leave it like that. It sort of looks nice with the asphalt color as well, blending into it. But if you don't see what you're looking for, you can go ahead and look for something like, let's say, rust. We'll just go all. And so a couple different options here. This is one that's been previously downloaded. Otherwise, you can always hit the download option here. So that's available to us as well now. I'm just going to drag and pull this onto here. So now we have a rust finish there. The other thing, let's just say let's say I'm looking for water in my materials. There we are. We could go through and let's do a lake. So there's our lake. So now as I kind of zoom through here, maybe we go over to the mound, up the switchback, you start to get fairly decent looking skyline view with the reflection and everything. And the lake, so that looks pretty good. The next thing I'll go over is just how to set some landscape elements specifically within our little site boundary area here. So let me close out of this. Now you can set individual trees. I think here, you're able to import additional trees and things, but the library at the start like this is not very elaborate, let's say, at least in comparison to Lumion. But let me go ahead and do a birch just to give you a sense of 2 birches here that we can work with. So if you have the gray birch, you can start to set these. So I'll just do that. I'll set these as a kind of somewhat grid, and you can just hit the escape key if you want to get out of that option, and you can select these individual trees and you can start to play around with their relative age here by pulling on them. So that'll give you the height difference, and you can change a whole bunch of things here with the tree itself. If I zoom in a little bit, you can change the tint. So now I have more of a kind of purple tint to that tree. I'm just going to hit undo just so they all look the same. Escape to get out of that. So you can place individual trees like that, but you can, if you go down into our context option, you can actually paint vegetation, which is quite nice. So if I close out of my search, and let's say I want to set up something that is, let's say a poplar, I'm just dragging and pulling, and linden, and let's do the weeping willow. So now we have 3 different trees here. You can see we have a diameter of 10 meters. The way to actually enable this is I'm holding shift to select all these, and I'm going to click on the paintbrush. And here now you can increase the diameter so you can see the size. Differentiation. So once you're happy with it, you can just click down and populate the area with trees using this kind of paint option. Very similarly, let me increase to increase the density, you have to do it afterwards. So let me just do a couple more, just all at the perimeter like that. And so let's say I want to get rid of some of them. You can just do the eraser, and you can actually just erase the exact same way. I'm just going to hit Control Z to bring those back. I'm going to hit Escape to get out of that command. And so now here you can actually increase the density, so the amount of trees. Let me go over so you can see sort of low density and higher based on that spread. So there we go, pretty good view. I'm just hitting Escape so you can again select that and do things like setting to have this overall age. You can start to have your landscape shrink and grow, which is kind of a nice feature. This will recur as well in the video rendering option. But let's stick around half in terms of their age, 55% age. The other nice feature here in our landscape version is if we go back to our context, you can also do a vegetation scatter. Now this becomes a little more legible than if I'm more zoomed in, but if we have a kind of long grass, say something like this, and I drag and pull this down here, we can now, if I select this and I go scatter add and I click here, we can actually start to add 3-dimensional grass, as you can see here. And with every click, it increases the density. So now we have a sort of highly planted, especially as you zoom in, overgrown even, if you will, planting area. So there, that's starting to look pretty nice. Go back. In Lumion, I had also shown how to add things like rocks. So let me just go ahead and add some of those. So very similar, in terms of the breakdown of adding stone. They can be quite large. Let's say I like this form, but I don't like the size. I can just hit escape to get out of that command. Select this and hit 7 and start to pull down to scale that down. 5 to go back to my regular gumball, and I can just kind of move any of these elements around by clicking and pulling, and they'll just snap to the ground plane. While we're in this context option, maybe I'll show how to get some cyclists to move, just like how we did in Lumion. So here you can do this using paths. I'll do bicycle path, and here you just need to hit this pen tool, point A to point B, and I'll hit escape, and that gets me to these options here. So you can increase or decrease the density. So you can have more cyclists on this path, or if you put the density down closer to a single cyclist, and you can up their speed up to 30 kilometers an hour and down to standing still. So once you find a good speed, you're sort of good to set that. So there we go. That's how you get a cyclist or a couple cyclists moving along a path. So what's really nice here is they are just like moving mid-scene. So you could have an image like this where you're standing still and there's characters moving through. If we go back, I could start to add additional paths, because it looks strange, right, if they just sort of disappear. And so we can have them maybe just going off scene here, something like that. And so again, if I go back down now, they can, looks like I've snapped actually to the top of this building here. So that's not going to work very well for us. We don't want that. So I'm going to just take this and try and snap it down here. That'll make a little more sense. Let's go back and take a look. Yeah, very nice. So now that's a little more believable, right? They vanish beyond at least this vantage point. And they're also doing a good job of avoiding the stone. In addition to this, just know that you do have other path options, right? You can do vehicles or characters. Let's just say we're happy with the cyclist, because really the logic remains true for characters as well in terms of how we move through them. So from here, we'll just kind of go back to the import area as a sort of home base, and we can start to add additional information. So we can add vehicles. In this case, I like to use the crane as a demonstration, because it is the animated crane instead of the static. Now it does snap to objects. So if I zoom out a little bit, if the topography is off, the crane will also be off. And so we want this maybe somewhere here is okay. And I'm just going to hit escape, select this, and I'm going to hit 7 just to scale that down a little bit for myself to something, it felt a little bit too large for my scene. And so what's nice, again, is that crane will move throughout our scene. It may not move depending on the compute right away, but in the scene, it will actually like orbit around. So you can see it slowly moving now, a little more legible from a different angle. Okay. So I've added that. We can add a couple other things as well, different objects if we want, things you may find in the city. So we could do bollards, might be a nice option, something like this, with kind of, in this case, a light feature. I'm just going to add some random objects, something like that. And let's go to street lights, because I'll show you a night scene, which can be quite nice. So let's do a larger object like this, which will cast a lot of light. We'll go back. There are some interesting benches, things which are could be kind of nice to add to our landscape. Like if we want a bench, like zoom out a little bit, I'll hit escape. So something like that. And we'll go back, see what else we have in the construction. We could have a nice scaffolding set. Why not? Really strange kind of plaza scene at the moment. And we could even have potentially some different characters that we may want to add. So here you go to characters. Let's do a group just so you can see there's some interesting ways that they interact with each other. So you can see potentially some people playing here. It looks like kicking something. I'll choose this one with the piano. And why don't we have that just set over here? So there's a kind of live performance. And I'll just kind of scroll over just so you can see what that's starting to look like there. So all the characters, really do kind of move independent. You have the cyclist in the back. So even if the camera is not moving, you can have a lot of other movement in your scene, which is nice. Animals, we could add Magritte here, and even bird. I'll hit escape. The bird snaps to the ground plane, so you do have to move it up using the kind of gumball. And let's take a look over here. And if you find the bird is a little bit on the large side, just a reminder, you can start to scale them down. And I'll hit 5 again just to go back to my regular gumball. There we go. Just some other options in terms of atmospherics, you can add some butterflies. If you know that your scene's gonna at some point have a vantage point, say from here, you can put those in the foreground. So now you have butterflies. We'll go back. Now, one other thing we may want to set here potentially is a kind of sky dome for ourselves. Let's go with low sun and overcast for Seattle. And we can play around with this one here, low sun overcast. It's one I already have downloaded, but just know there's lots of options for you here. And to get this one into the scene, you just click down, drag and pull. And so now we have a slightly more dynamically lit scene. Even the light is starting to be on in this case. A couple more things that we could add if we wanted to. Just for the most part, you can just search things. We could search for fog. So we could add some ground fog, which you can see appearing here now. And again, I'm just trying to emulate some of the things that we were doing in Lumion as well. I know we did fire. So let me see about fire. Fire with smoke or a small fire. Why don't we set some fire a little further, just so you can kind of see how that performs. I know we had set it in the previous demo just right at the entrance here, so the cyclists are like going by it, but I'll show you the two different versions there. So some fire off in the distance, and we'll just hit escape to go out of that. Just see there are some other options here. We're gonna play around a little bit with things like smog, but more in our media. There are some other tools that you may be interested in playing around with depending on what you're doing, such as animators. So you can start to actually create movement of various objects in your scene. So for instance, I'm not sure why in this example you would want to do this, but if you do one of these translators, let me hit escape and select this, you can start to increase the distance that this movement will happen in. And if you go to more, you can actually change the axis. So in this case, if we're moving something this way, I could actually have, say, this ground move away, and you'll see the cyclists will fall because they actually do respond to these geometries. So here, if I just go to object link and I link this, you can see now they sort of fall down beyond and go back up to where this is snapped to, and some are saved and then not. So just an option there for how you can start to move things around. Again, I'm not certain why specifically in this example, this isn't really something probably you would be doing, but just know that's an option to have objects move. I'm just going to hit escape and undo. So that's that there. Same thing here with the ground. So lots of options. I'm just going to hit undo again, escape and undo. And I'm just going to select that and delete. And so there we go. Let me just orbit around a little bit now that we have some materials set. We can go up our switchback path here, which starts to read really nice now that we have lighting in it. And that's from our topography using LiDAR earlier. And now we're at the sort of top. And at least from here over, you do have a fairly okay stand-in for the Seattle skyline cast onto the water. Let me hit escape. And so from here, let me just kind of go up to this view, and we can start to render out a scene now. Like here's the full view. Let me just go back a little bit so you can kind of see this full landscape that we've made. Now, if we want to render this out, we can go to media, in this case, video, create video. And the first thing you'll see is part 1. Just know you can make multiple parts. So now I have 3 different clips. They happen to all be from the same view at the moment, so we can hit delete. But it's just to say that here, if I hit delete, it functions very much the same in that as you want to start to set a scene for yourself here, you can take a photo and then you can say zoom in a little bit. Let's say that's my next spot. And maybe that's my next spot. And then we'll go to this area here. So at the moment, this operates kind of like a scrub. So you'll see I have 2 of the same images, so that allows there to be a kind of pause at the beginning before it zooms in and into that view. At the moment, that from the left to the right of the scene, from here to here, is 10 seconds in duration. So we can hit play here just to start and see how this looks. So it gets pretty quick right near the end. And maybe for the purposes of this, I'll also delete out the pause at the start. So now we go right in. Slow. And you'll notice the whole thing will be slightly slower now, just because of that distance. But here we can hit 30. So now we've made it 3 times as slow. And so that's a chance, that's how you can kind of slow down this pan function. And so this represents a 30-second clip now as we move towards the fixed final scene here. And so you may want to, at this point, you could take this and copy, or you could take this and paste. So now we have a kind of duplicate. So for instance, now we could delete, delete, delete. And so this gives us the option to start to render out additional scenes with different atmospheres or things like that, right? And it's also good to chop these up into different parts, because when we're rendering these out, if we've made an error in one of the scenes and we want to edit something, we don't have to re-render the whole video. We can just do part. This might be a little slow for me. Let's switch this to 15 or double the speed. Also just for the purposes of this demo, I think that'll be a little better for us. So you can see that zoom in, we arrive, and then see we hold in this next part at this scene where really it's just the characters moving through. And we're able to just record here. Again, this is a 30-second clip static in place. We can change that to 5. So what that lets us do though here is we can start to keep going. So we could use, in this case, our cue to go up. We'll hit the plus sign, and then we may want to pan forward. And maybe we want to orbit over something like this. And then maybe we want to just pan across the whole site to here, plus. So won't make you rewatch that. We'll scrub ahead to the next scene, and we'll hit plus, up and over, and pan across. We may want to change some of that speed for ourselves. Play. A little bit slower. Okay, so I think hopefully you kind of get the point in terms of how to set some of these things up. From here, I think what's really exciting, we'll go ahead and do some settings. And so actually this is a good view to show some of this. So rendered, we can actually have our path tracer on, which is really fantastic in terms of realistic ray tracing, so realistic lighting and things like that. If you're finding that you're lost, like you don't know how to go back, just know it's up here. So we'll go to like settings, and we can play around with our lighting, white balance, all these kinds of things, the sun intensity. So it could be a really super sunny day, something like this. Or, if we do want it to be a night scene, we can pull that down, right? I'm going to make it just decently bright for us for the moment, just so you can start to see some of the weather settings, which can be quite nice. Let's make that a little less exposed. There we are. Settings. We'll go to weather. The weather's a great feature because it follows the patterning of a storm. So let this just load a little bit. So slowly you can start to see, it gets wet here. So during a rain event, and then, so this would be like kind of peak rain here, quite wet and flooded. And then sort of after the rain, so just slightly damp. And you'll see this on the plaza and things like that. So why don't we set this to somewhat rainy. And then what's really interesting is you can also set your growth, as well as your seasons. I'll show you the seasons just so you can see what snow looks like here. So you can do a snow render or back. So it follows that cycle. And then you can do the growth. So you can actually have your trees in real time from quite small, here's the initial scene, to fully mature, 100% grown at this size. So hopefully that seems somewhat valuable to you. You know, we could make this initial scene, for instance, as a kind of 50% roughly growth and rain. And let me just go to some other effects just so you can see, you know, we could increase our wind speed for these trees, the direction of it, all these kinds of things. You go back to weather, back a little more. So I think we're pretty good there. Why don't I go back to the video one and we can see what this full scene looks like from the beginning with these additional settings. Let me hit play. And this will render a lot more crisp, but just to give you this kind of very noisy preview of how this scene will start to look. And then of course, in our second scene, we don't have any of those settings, right? So if you do want the exact same settings, just know you can go back over here, click and copy ambiance, go here and paste ambiance. And so now, for instance, if I hit play on this one, and this will render super crisp, it's just the preview here. And this will take a long time to actually render out. So this just gives you hopefully a sense of the preview. What I might do for the purposes of this demo is let's just go here and we'll go to settings. And I'm just going to turn the path tracer off. I'm going to go back to my settings and I'm going to make this more of a nighttime scene, something like this. Just so you can also see some of the other features like the rain, for instance, which now becomes more visible because we don't have the ray trace on, which requires a lot of compute. And so there we are. Why don't we have something like this for a scene? And let me go back to video. And then it might be interesting. So we have this ambiance. We've set this for each. And then let's delete these ones. But I'll also delete this last scene here. And now for these, if we go to settings, weather, let's lower the growth a little bit. Maybe the growth can be a little bit larger than it was in our very first scene, but not quite 100. And let's go back to video settings. And let's see how this looks if we start here. Of course, this will be quite a dramatic change from this, but let's go from here. And so those are just a couple options. Let me go here to settings, weather, effects. You can also start to play up things like your smog. Just zoom out a little bit just so you can kind of see this full atmosphere. So it can be quite smoggy or something like that. What's kind of cool too that maybe is worth showing, if we go weather, settings, video. Let me go back to this one and let me just copy this ambiance and paste it over here, just to this first one. And then let's go back and hit play. You do get like this nice transition, right? So you're actually changing the season. I mean, this is quite blown out and a different rendering setting altogether. But hopefully this gives you a sense, just in a kind of demo perspective, like how you might start to switch weather scenes and things like that between clips from day to night, potentially from rain to not, in different sizes of trees and things like that. So this isn't quite so smooth. Let's hit delete on that. In any case, I think you probably get a good sense of, you know, even here, maybe let's do settings, lighting, lower the white balance. Make it quite dark. So lots of things to kind of tinker with and play around with. If we change the settings here, turn that off, settings, lighting. Let's just like not have it as blown out. Let's see how this looks as an option. quite flooded, at least in their preview render, and goes to night. So that's a pretty jarring switch, but maybe there's a transition that we could set up there as well. Okay, so I think you kind of get the point here. Once you export this, you can just go to export. In this case, go to video and video 1. And then you would just start your export. And you choose the folder that you'd like it to go to. We're just going to select folder as our desktop. Because I have ray trace off at the moment, this seems like it'll actually be quite quick. But in any case, let me close out of this and we can circle back and we can see the videos. I'll play those at the very end just to close this video, and we can leave it at that. So let me just hit resume and we can go to the desktop and we can just play that full video sequence here. All right, so yeah, we can leave it at that for this rendering in motion demonstration of Twinmotion.